You are watching a clip from the Sketchy A.F podcast here on the Shivery Studios YouTube channel. New episodes post every Friday, so don't forget to subscribe. So with all that sort of comic book work, obviously you roll into the 2000s and you started to do a lot of your concept work or storyboard work for feature films. And of course, with that work, it did lead you into Game of Thrones, which, I mean, one of the most significant pop culture things of all time, without a doubt. With something and a project on the scale of that, I was curious about how it, like, where did the small little beginnings of that whole journey start in terms of, was it someone, maybe an agent who got in contact with someone, or how did this whole situation come about?
I was working on Your Highness, the feature film, and I was doing concept artwork on it as well as storyboarding. The first part of my time there was doing concepts. There was other concept artists as well doing all sort of beautiful big color paintings, and I was just drawing pencil drawings of things. They kept coming to me with, "Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this?" And I would do my stuff, and we had a blast on that. That was a nuts film. And the thing was that my producer in that was Mark Huffam, and Mark Huffam's an amazing character that's been responsible for all sorts of things coming over here. I mean, his first, I think, it was line producer on Saving Private Ryan, which is a pretty remarkable film as well in its time, and that was down in the south of Ireland. But Mark's worked with Ridley Scott and a whole bunch of interesting people as a producer. But he was producing on Your Highness, and at a certain point in Your Highness, he came to me one day and asked me. He said, "Would you be interested in doing some kind of moonlighting on another potential TV series?" And I said, "Sure, Mark. What is it?" He said, "I can't tell you." And I said, "Well, okay, what's it about?" And he said, "Well, it's medieval fantasy." And I said, "Well, that's kind of what we're doing on this." And he said, "Yeah, but it's serious."
Yeah.
I went, "Okay." And so he asked me to meet the supervising art director. I was going to meet up with him and actually chat about what it was that they wanted illustrations done up. So I went over and they were showing me castles and kind of periods of armor and so on. So I had to go away and draw a bunch of castles, a bunch of knights in armor, um, some beheadings, and a bunch of big giant wolves. And they would give me little bits of script, but there was no headers on it, so you didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
You know, a description of something. So I went away, and I it was over a weekend and into the next week. At night time I would draw up these things, and same time I'd be doing my day job on Your Highness. And when I get delivered the artwork, I went back to just doing Your Highness, and they sent it away to America. I knew it was going to somewhere, but I didn't know to who. So I get back on with Your Highness, living the life of insanity with those guys. And uh, Mark came to me partway through and said, "We've got Game of Thrones." And I said, "Oh, is that what I was working on?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, brilliant. Do I get a job out of this?" And he said, "Absolutely." So when I would finish Your Highness, I was going to move over to Game of Thrones, um, which was only trying to set up at that time. There was so few people in town, and so it was like a Wednesday I finished on Your Highness, and on Thursday I was on Game of Thrones doing stuff, and that was just amazing, because the thing was that there was a bunch of different drafting artists there, who would be working on buildings and stuff like that,
Uh huh.
doing the plans and stuff, but they only had me there as an artist. And so the thing was, they hadn't even determined what I was at that point. They put me working with the props department in a sense, and initially, because the first thing I got to do was design the weapons. So all those hero weapons like Ice and Needle and Longclaw and Cat's Paw and the White Walker weapons and stuff, I got to design. So that was the
Wow.
first thing I was doing, and then there was a couple of carriages for Cersei that I drew up, and and then there was some other stuff to go along with weapons, like for especially for the Dothraki characters, it wasn't just bits of weapons. It was a bit more of the stuff they would have over the horses and things like this. And all of that was they were nice pencil illustrations. Really, it was like I was on something when I was doing that. It was
Uh
like
huh.
something had taken over because every day I was doing drawings that I was really happy with. I couldn't believe it. It was like this stuff was just turning out of me.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I'd stepped into Conan. And of course, one of the characters I've always loved, never got to do, but Conan, amazing. So the thing is, I was working through this stuff, and then they came and asked me about we need White Walkers. So I got to sit down and do a painting of the White Walkers. I did a few paintings, and that was like the basis of what they used to create the White Walker characters. So
There
it's
was
like
one
it's
painting actually in particular when we are talking about those White Walker paintings, and I believe it might be one you're referencing. But I remember seeing it years ago when I just recently again came across it when I was looking stuff up for our talk today. And it was a painting of, I believe it must have been used for that first little cold open where guys from they go beyond the wall. And it's a painting that seems to be a point of view looking through the trees because it's framed by these trees on the other end with one of the White Walkers on the dead horse. Would that have been one of those early
oh
paintings that you would have did?
the Dead Horse one. Oh, it depends because you might have seen one that was right at the end of the Game of Thrones series because there's one where they all come out of the woods and it's a pretty good dead horse and a pretty creepy White Walker.
That
But
was a great painting.
there's another one that was um, at the end of season two where the description was for an armored White Walker in the storyboards.
Uh-huh.
I'd drawn up the storyboard, and Sam's hiding out behind a rock, and the Walker comes past on the horse, and then it stops, and the Walker looks into where Sam is, and Sam's quaking in fear, and the Walker just moves on. He's leaving him, and all the army of the dead are walking behind him, but he's an armored White Walker, and the painting I did of that White Walker was because I'd been asked, could I color up a panel for the American Blu-ray to be released with a card in it,
Yeah.
and I can't just color up a bloody frame. I thought, so I sat down and did a painting of the frame. So it's this armored, and it's very blue painting, and this guy's looking out towards us, and I probably was influenced by Frazetta's Death Dealer character, but the point was, here is this character, and that went off to be printed as a card that was only with the American Blu-rays. The
Uh-huh.
British Blu never got them. European Blu-rays never got them. It was just the American ones.
Left out
Uh,
again.
I know, but it's cool, It's just what it is. But the thing is, when they filmed the sequence, of course, they they kind of didn't do the armor, and all you get is this wispy blue guy on the horse with his hair wisping about the
Yeah.
place. Uh, and I just was so kind of, come on, guys, you're going for the hard hair. And what do we get? We get wispy blue guy. Anyway, yeah, there's a bunch of paintings that I did, and the thing is, um, I that was the other thing. I kept my White Walker and all my storyboards the way I liked them. I didn't. I didn't kind of. I kind of just kept drawing what I like drawing, as opposed
You
to.
wanted the badass armor version, not the L'Oreal commercial
Well, look,
version.
there's that was the only one that had the armor. The rest of them don't. But the thing is, I still wanted. There's bits of armor because that's the other thing. It was like, I don't know if I've imagined this or whether George Martin had described this somewhere, but there was a thing that was like with ice armor. Maybe it was just me, but I would compose
I
stuff
believe it's
that.
in the books. He talks about the specific
Uh,
armor that they would have worn being like that. Yeah.
so the thing was, I was thinking all this stuff out about how did this stuff work, and I was thinking of, right, if a bit gets chipped off, does it reform itself because it's ice? Is it because, again, we're talking
Yeah.
about mythical creatures, and wounds that would just heal up because they were these freakazoids. Anyway, and of course their ice swords. Their swords were made of ice. They had to be super strong, whatever the hell they were.
Yeah.
Um, and you're thinking ice against steel, but anyway, it was cool. The there's all that's the thing. You got so into the characters, you got so into the idea of what you were trying to tell that you took it so seriously. I mean, that's the thing I think why it worked so well, that loads of people invested serious mental time in this. You were living in a way within that world. Like you worked such long hours, then you would come back and the stuff would still be going around and you'd be thinking how to approach certain things. And you offered up ideas to your directors when they were talking to you, some of which would be taken on board and other stuff wouldn't be. Sometimes it was completely off center because they were going to be going down a different route. So, but the thing was, it's not the fact that you would come up with something that was wrong. It's the fact that you were that invested in it, that you cared enough to want to do
Yeah.
that sort of. That's what was so important to me with Thrones. I really loved it. I cared what I was doing.
Well, when you were talking about designing the armor for that White Walker for your painting, it seems obvious. Like I would imagine from the outside looking in, that whenever you're designing the weapons that you talked about in the beginning, there's obvious reference material you can go to. You can look throughout history to find the designs for weapons and armor. Same with the Dothraki, you can look into other cultures and what they would have used. When it came to doing the White Walker armor, what would have been the reference or the kind of feeling that you went to whenever you tried to produce that?
One paragraph in George R. R. Martin's book.
Pretty good place to
Very,
get. Yeah, great place to get your reference. To be fair,
because if you remember, I mean, I don't know if you've read all those books.
I
The thing
have.
was,
Yeah, still waiting on the next one.
better than me. I read the first one, and the first one was. I figured I needed to read it if I was going to be going to do this series. So between the time I did my drawings and finding out what it was, and then starting on the show, I had read the first book, and there's one paragraph description of George R. R. Martin's White Walkers, and that's it, one paragraph, and because they don't appear again,
Hmm.
in that first, there's no sign of them again. But he set it up so that you knew that these guys were obviously a threat somewhere, but you forget it
Yeah,
until near the end. Then you're thinking, "Oh heck, what's coming?" And it's not just Ned's head; it's something else. And the thing was, I remember that description just carved an image in my head. So when I went to paint it, and I did it like I started one day and I finished it the second day and handed it over to the guys as their reference point, and then I did another one and so on. And the thing was, it was just that thing. You went with the image that was in your head. You didn't get into relying on a whole bunch of other stuff. It was just what's there. What am I thinking? And yeah, it would be a great like a heavy metal rock album cover.
yeah.
It's like if you stick a guitar on them, it would work really well. Anyway, the point is,
Make a very
it,
good sort of Iron Maiden cover or something like that.
like that. It was kind of cool. Anyway, but that's a lot of these things. Somebody asks you where your reference point is. Well, certainly with the weaponry and so on throughout the story. Any of the weaponry that I got to design, you ask the questions. Gemma, who was the first production designer, she knew kind of the areas she was wanting to go into with that stuff. And we had a really brilliant props artist on there, uh, props designer, and she was fantastic. I'm sorry, it's so long ago I've forgotten her name, but the point was she was fantastic, and I used to have chats with her when it came to well, which area are we taking kind of our basis from? What are we looking at? And there was stuff from India, there was stuff from um, Arabic countries, there was it depended on what it was. The stuff with the Starks was all very very stark. It was all rough, raw Scottish type stuff,
Yeah.
and lots of northern influences. The Lannister stuff was very bejeweled and very kind of decadent, and so it was the European styled stuff. It was fantastic. The weapons were great fun to do, but that was the whole point. Same with any of the armor drawings or concept pieces that I was. You see, a lot of the time, if I wanted to know what the sword was like, I'd have to draw the character. So I would draw character drawings as well. I figured they might be useful. I would draw character drawings, and the weaponry they would have would be what I'd been designing, and I needed to find how it sat on them, how it worked with them, to kind of get the weight right in my mind.
Yeah.
So I did some really nice character drawings, and all of that was all, as I say, working towards what these things would be. The influences were definitely all over the world when it came to the uh, physical characters. The White Walkers was a different thing because of the fact that it was fantasy imagination and it was
Yeah.
going by George's book paragraphs. Um, and then later on, you see, I remember I bought the second book that I was intending to read it, but I was called out to Los Angeles to do some to work out the ideas for Blu-ray drawings and stuff because they were going to animate stuff in the ancient histories. So I was out there and I had such a nice time with my friend Adam, who was the guy in charge, and Adam would take me around Los Angeles in the evenings. So we'd work during the day on the ideas, and then in the evenings we'd be out in Los Angeles. I never got a chance to read the damn book. I get on the plane, I'm coming back home, and I think I'll read it there. And I got it. I'd done about, I don't know, 4 chapters or something like that. Got back home, and I was only home a little while when I got a call from the production office about could I go in because they had a big sequence that they wanted to try and work out. The director wasn't going to be in town for a while, but could I look at it? So I went in, and it was the Battle of Blackwater Bay, and
Yeah.
I did my first really big sequence um, of drawings because of the fact that I was trying to draw from every little bit of information in the script, and also knowing that they would be picking through, finding what it was that they would want, and of course they picked through it to find out how much it would cost, and realize, oh, there's too much money there to do that, too much to do that. Let's try and get this whittled down. So then they would go to David and Dan to get the script rejigged, and then the director came to town. So then it was another version. But the point was, because I was called in early, I got given the 10 scripts for season 2. So I sat and read the 10 scripts. Then I didn't need to read the book,
No.
so so I never read the book. So and then the same thing happened when it came to season 3. Before season 3 starts, I went and bought the third book. I go off out to Los Angeles, don't get to read the book, a couple of chapters maybe into it, have a really good time with Adam, do all the working out the ideas, come back and get ready to start doing the stuff with Adam. And so I put the book aside for a little bit. Then I got another call about, could you come in? We've got this sequence that it would be good to work out in advance. So it was like, okay, I'll come in and do that. And then I got the 10 scripts. So I read the 10 scripts, and then I realized I don't need
There
to
we
read.
go.
And then at the end of that, I said, that's it. I'm not buying another George R. R. Martin.
I'm not putting more money
I'm
into
not
George's
putting more
pocket.
money into
He's got
George.
enough.